My name is Amanda, and on May 2nd, I learned exactly how ruthless people can become when power clouds their judgment. It was a Wednesday night, 10:43 p.m., when my boss, Victoria Hale, called me into her office. The night before our global product launch, I'd been leading the development of Nexora, a platform projected to generate over $50 million in its first quarter. I lived and breathed that project for 14 months, sacrificing weekends, birthdays, and every ounce of peace I had left. Victoria sat at her mahogany desk, legs crossed, wine glass in hand, like we were discussing a menu. "Amanda," she said smoothly, "we've decided to move in a different direction." At first, I thought I'd misheard her. A different direction? The launch is tomorrow. Victoria smiled, the kind of smile you see before someone stabs you in the back. "We'll manage without you. Pack up your things." I felt the air leave my lungs. I glanced at the whiteboard behind her, the one I had filled with every critical detail for tomorrow's rollout. "You're firing me the night before launch?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay even. Victoria shrugged. "We appreciate your hard work, truly, but we need someone who fits our vision better. This isn't personal." I stared at her for a moment, taking in the designer suit, the expensive ring flashing on her finger, the board's approval echoing behind every word. And in that moment, I understood exactly what this was. It wasn't personal. Of course it was. It always is when a woman in power feels threatened by another woman who knows what she's doing. I nodded slowly. "Understood." Victoria leaned back, smug. "I knew you'd be professional about this." I smiled, just slightly. "Always." I packed my things in silence. My laptop, my notes, and one other thing, the encryption key tied directly to the heart of Nexora's back-end code. The key I had created, the key only I had access to. I didn't say a word. I didn't slam doors. I didn't even look back. But as I walked out of the building that night, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. Because while Victoria believed she'd erased me from the project, she had no idea I wasn't leaving empty-handed. And I certainly wasn't leaving powerless. Let me take you back 6 months earlier. When Victoria first pitched the idea of Nexora to the board, she had no clear plan, no working prototype, and zero experience in SaaS platforms. But she had ambition and the right connections. I was brought in by the CTO at the time, Daniel Scott, because I'd successfully led 2 other launches at my previous firm. Daniel wanted me to spearhead development quietly while Victoria took the credit publicly. I agreed, not because I'm naive, but because I believed in the product. At first, it didn't bother me. I let Victoria parade around like she'd architected the entire platform. I swallowed the comments. The board meetings where my name wasn't even mentioned. Why? Because I thought the work would speak for itself. I was wrong. The first cracks appeared 3 months ago. A small bug was discovered in the payment module, an issue Victoria insisted the interns fix instead of me. They failed. Twice. I stepped in, fixed it in under an hour, and Victoria publicly thanked the interns in the next meeting. I let it slide. Then came the budget cuts. Victoria cut my QA team by half without consulting me, claiming we didn't need that many testers. I stayed late for a week straight to cover the gaps myself. She noticed and used it to argue in front of the board that I was inefficient. By April, Daniel quietly resigned. Rumors said Victoria pushed him out. That's when I realized exactly how far she was willing to go to clear the path for herself. But I stayed. I kept working, because I wasn't going to walk away from something I'd built, until Wednesday night. That night wasn't just betrayal. It was a declaration of war. And Victoria had no idea what she'd started. Because while she saw me as disposable, she forgot one simple truth. You can't launch a product built on integrity by stabbing the person holding the foundation together. And tomorrow, launch day, she would learn that the hard way. Thursday morning felt strange. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. out of habit. The launch was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp, a synchronized global rollout across 3 continents. Months of work, millions of dollars in marketing, investors flying in from New York, Singapore, and Berlin. Everything had been set. Except now, I wasn't part of it. I sat at my kitchen counter, sipping coffee, staring at the glowing numbers on the microwave. I thought about staying away, disconnecting, letting it all unfold without me. But curiosity has a way of creeping in when you know disaster is coming. At 8:45 a.m., I opened my laptop. The Nexora platform launch page was live. Countdown timer ticking down the final seconds. Victoria's pre-recorded message was set to play at exactly 9 a.m., streamed on multiple platforms. A polished, carefully rehearsed speech about innovation, leadership, and bold new frontiers. I took a slow breath. Because here's the thing no one outside the dev team understood. Nexora's backend was designed with a layered encryption sequence. A sequence I'd engineered myself after months of client security audits and compliance requirements. The encryption wasn't just for protection. It was the literal ignition key of the system. Without the correct decryption token, the one stored on my secure drive, the platform wouldn't just malfunction. It wouldn't start. At all. A small, almost invisible safeguard I'd built when Victoria started making reckless decisions months ago. Not out of spite, but because I knew that if Nexora ever launched half-baked, the company could face lawsuits or even collapse. I never imagined I'd need that safeguard for this reason. At 9 a.m. exactly, the launch button was pressed. And nothing happened. I watched the public site hang on the loading screen. The connection error message blinked after 8 seconds. I clicked over to the investor livestream. The camera showed Victoria standing on stage, microphone in hand, the massive screen behind her still black. A murmur rippled through the crowd. She kept smiling. I'll give her credit. She had the CEO facade down to an art. The tech team, my former team, scrambled in the background. I recognized half of them. People I'd trained myself. They frantically checked servers, reloaded dashboards, whispered urgently into headsets. I refreshed the page. Still dead. At 9:05 a.m., the live stream caught a mic whisper. Encryption keys missing. We can't access the mainframe. Victoria's smile wavered. Barely. She turned, snapped something at the lead engineer, a guy she'd promoted over me 2 weeks earlier. By 9:12 a.m., investors were leaving their seats. The live chat exploded with comments. Is this a joke? $50 million launch and they can't even start? Pulling investments now. I leaned back in my chair, letting it sink in. This wasn't petty revenge. I hadn't sabotaged the system. I simply didn't leave behind the keys they had no right to use. I wasn't on their payroll anymore. They fired me. They removed me from every system. But they forgot the most important thing. You can't fire the architect and expect the house to stand. At 9:25 a.m., Victoria finally addressed the crowd. We're experiencing minor technical issues. The launch will be rescheduled. Her voice cracked on the last word. That's when my phone started buzzing. First, it was Mia, the lead developer who'd been my right hand since day one. Mia. Amanda. We didn't know. They locked us out this morning. Please. What's going on? Then Daniel, the ex-CTO. Daniel. I just heard what happened. I'm sorry. I should have warned you about Victoria sooner. By 10 a.m., my inbox was flooded. From engineers, from clients, even from investors. But one message stood out. Victoria Hale. Subject line. Call me. I stared at it for a long moment. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. It wasn't triumph. It was something colder. A realization. They never valued the work. Only the control. And when they lost control, they realized who actually held the power. I closed my laptop. Let them sweat. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I didn't pick up Victoria's call. Not right away. I stared at the message for a long time. Call me. Short. Cold. No apology. No explanation. The kind of message people send when they think they still hold the upper hand. At 10:15 a.m., my phone buzzed again. This time it was Mia. Mia, please. I know this isn't my place, but the whole team is panicking. The clients are threatening to pull out. We didn't know they'd lock you out like this. I almost called her back. I really did. But I needed to think. Because here's the truth no one talks about in corporate life. When things go wrong, loyalty dies first. And after loyalty, blame follows like a bloodhound. I knew exactly what Victoria was doing right now. In that boardroom, behind closed doors, she was pointing fingers at me, at the team, at anyone who couldn't push back. I'd seen it happen before. And I wasn't about to step back into a burning building I didn't set on fire. But this wasn't just about me anymore. Mia, the dev team, even Daniel, they didn't deserve to go down in flames for Victoria's ego. By 10:30 a.m., another email arrived. This one from Richard Torres, Chief Legal Officer. Subject: Urgent request for immediate consultation. The message was formal. Too formal. We understand you may have critical information regarding the Nexera encryption protocol. Please contact me directly at your earliest convenience. I stared at those words. Critical information. So now they realized. I poured myself another cup of coffee and let the clock tick. At 10:45 a.m., Victoria herself called again. This time I answered. Victoria, I said calmly. Her voice snapped across the line. Amanda, we need to talk, now. I kept my tone even. About what? Her breath caught, just for a second. The encryption key, the system's dead. Investors are furious. We need access. Immediately. I leaned against the counter. You fired me last night. Amanda, don't play games, she snapped. This company's reputation is at stake. There it was. Not, I'm sorry. Not, we made a mistake. Just her reputation. The company. The investors. I let a silence hang between us. Finally, I said, Victoria, I built that system. I built it with the assumption that I was part of the team, part of the launch. You made it clear I wasn't. You know I didn't mean it like that. Her voice softened. Fake. Rehearsed. This is business. You're a professional. Don't let emotions ruin everything you worked for. I almost laughed. Emotions? You're right, I said quietly. This is business. Before she could respond, I added, So let me explain the business situation, Victoria. You fired me without cause, effective immediately. You removed my system access. You revoked my contract. Therefore, any proprietary tools I created, including security protocols, fall under contractual agreement clauses. You'll need to renegotiate if you want access. I could practically hear her jaw clench. You're blackmailing me? I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. I'm explaining reality. You fired the architect. You don't get to keep the keys for free. There was a long, sharp silence. Then she hissed, What do you want? I let that question hang for a moment, because the truth was, I wasn't even sure yet. But I knew one thing. I wasn't stepping back into the mess on their terms. I'll let you know, I said. And I hung up. At 11 a.m., Daniel called. Unlike Victoria, his first words were, Amanda, I'm sorry. I closed my eyes for a second. He sounded sincere. I should have seen this coming, he added. I should have warned you. Victoria's been pushing everyone out. Anyone she saw as a threat. I sighed. I know. I'm not calling on their behalf, Daniel said quietly. I'm calling because the board's meeting this afternoon, and they're panicking. They want answers. Real ones. I frowned. And you're telling me this because they've asked for you to join. I froze. The board? He nodded. Victoria's story isn't holding up. Investors are threatening to sue. The board wants to hear from you, directly. And Amanda, this might be your only chance to set the record straight. I stared at the floor, heart pounding. A week ago, I'd have killed for a seat at that table. Now it felt like a trap, or a turning point. I wasn't sure which yet, but either way, I wasn't going in empty-handed. At 2 p.m. sharp, I walked into the boardroom I'd never been invited to before. 12 people sat around a polished walnut table, directors, investors, legal counsel. I recognized most of them from hallway glances or names on emails I was never copied on. They barely glanced at me when I entered. Victoria sat at the far end, dressed in a tailored navy suit, face perfectly composed. She didn't look my way. Daniel gave me a small nod from the side of the room. His eyes said, "Stay sharp." The chairman, Leonard Marks, motioned to the empty seat across from Victoria. "Amanda, please join us." I sat down, hands steady, heart anything but. Leonard folded his hands. "We asked you here because we believe you have information relevant to this morning's events." I met his gaze evenly. "I do." Victoria cut in, voice smooth as glass. "I think we're all aware of what happened. Amanda misunderstood the terms of her exit. It was a sensitive situation, timing-wise. Unfortunately, there was a gap in handover protocol." I leaned forward slightly. There was no misunderstanding. Victoria terminated my employment less than 12 hours before a global launch and revoked my access. She also failed to secure the encryption key critical to the platform's operation. A murmur rippled around the table. Leonard raised a hand. "Let her speak." I took a slow breath. "This isn't about hurt feelings or some petty sabotage. I created Nexora's encryption framework under strict security protocols. That key was tied to my contract. Standard practice in high-level development. When I was terminated without cause, that key, and my responsibility, ended with it." Victoria's jaw tightened. "You're making this personal." I shook my head. You made it personal when you decided leadership meant eliminating anyone who didn't fit your agenda. And you gambled a $50 million launch on the assumption that I'd either roll over or fix things for you after you fired me. Leonard's expression didn't change, but other board members exchanged glances. One of them, a woman I recognized from investor calls, Marianne Lee, spoke up. "Is this true, Victoria?" Victoria gave a tight smile. "There were tensions. Amanda was difficult to manage. She lacked flexibility in leadership structures." I almost laughed. Difficult to manage because I refused to push out my team. Because I insisted on proper QA. Because I documented every change you made without oversight. Another voice chimed in, this time from Richard Torres, the legal officer. "Documentation?" I met his eyes. "Yes, I have records, emails, project logs, change requests, all showing exactly who made decisions and who overrode them." Silence. Leonard looked directly at me. "You have these records?" I nodded once. "On a secured drive. With timestamps," Victoria snapped, "You're bluffing." I met her glare head-on. If I was bluffing, we wouldn't be having this meeting. Daniel cleared his throat from the side. "She's not bluffing. I've seen the logs. They're real." A new tension settled over the room. Not explosive. Just sharp. Leonard leaned back slowly in his chair. "Victoria, did you authorize the removal of Amanda without ensuring a proper transition protocol?" Victoria opened her mouth. Closed it. Leonard's voice stayed calm. "Answer the question." Victoria's mask cracked just slightly. "I believe the team would manage." A low murmur ran down the table again. Leonard steepled his fingers. "And now we're looking at a failed launch, investor backlash, and possible legal exposure. Because of a belief?" Victoria looked down, her shoulders stiff. Leonard turned to me. "Amanda, if we asked you to assist with recovery, what would it take?" I let that sink in for a moment. This wasn't just about fixing code. It was about who they'd trust moving forward. I chose my words carefully. Full reinstatement. Authority over my team. Direct reporting to this board, not Victoria. And a formal statement clearing me of wrongdoing. Leonard exchanged a look with Marianne. She nodded once. Victoria's head snapped up. You can't be serious. Leonard met her outburst with icy calm. We are. He looked back at me. You'll have a contract in your inbox by the end of the day. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. Then I'll have the system online by tomorrow morning. Victoria's face drained of color. For the first time, she looked powerless. And I realized in that moment, this wasn't just a turning point. This was the moment everything shifted. By 6 p.m., the contract hit my inbox. It was short. Director, reinstatement of employment effective immediately. Temporary authority over international product operations. Direct reporting line to the board of directors. No involvement or oversight by Victoria Hale. The final clause read like a quiet admission. No individual will interfere with Amanda Green's decisions pertaining to Nexora's operation and recovery. I read it 3 times. A week ago, I might have felt victorious. Now, it felt transactional. Because a title didn't change the fact that the same people who let Victoria run unchecked were only stepping in now, when the damage touched their bottom line. At 6:30 p.m., Daniel called. I heard, he said. His voice was careful. You're back. For now, I replied. He hesitated. Amanda, I know how this looks, but this is a chance. I stared out my apartment window at the city skyline. Is it? Or is it just another way to clean up their mess so they can go back to pretending it never happened? Daniel sighed. Maybe, but you're in the room now. And once you're in, you don't have to play by their rules anymore. I appreciated his honesty, and that's when I realized he was right. This wasn't about settling scores. This was about setting a standard. I wasn't here to save their launch. I was here to make sure people like Victoria didn't get the chance to do this to anyone else. By 7 p.m., I walked back into the office for the first time since the night they fired me. The floor was almost empty, just a skeleton crew trying to contain the fallout. Mia was there, typing furiously at her desk. She looked up when I walked in. Her eyes widened. Amanda, you're back? I gave her a small nod. We've got work to do. She stood, almost knocking over her chair. Thank God. You have no idea what it's been like. I do, I said quietly. And it ends now. We gathered the remaining team. No speeches, no big declarations, just clear instructions. We pulled up the server logs, cross-checked security layers, recalibrated encryption sequences. I restored the master key, the right way this time, with oversight. At 9:30 p.m., Mia looked up from her screen. All systems are green. I nodded. Good, let it run diagnostics overnight. We launch tomorrow. On our terms. She hesitated. Amanda, if they try to pull this again... I met her eyes. They won't. Because here's the truth they never expected. The moment you stop playing defense, everything changes. And I wasn't playing defense anymore. At 10 p.m., I walked past Victoria's office. The door was half open. She sat at her desk, staring blankly at her screen. For a moment, I considered walking in, rubbing it in, telling her exactly how it felt to have your power stripped away. But I didn't, because real power isn't about proving a point. It's about making sure the point never needs to be proven again. I kept walking. By midnight, the system passed every test. Secure, stable, ready. I left the office in silence. No victory laps, no smug satisfaction. Just a quiet certainty that by morning, everything would be different. Not because I'd fixed their problem, but because I finally understood something I should have known all along. When you build something with integrity, you don't owe loyalty to people who treat you like you're disposable. You owe it to yourself, and the people who believed in you when it mattered. And tomorrow, I wasn't coming back to clean up their mess. I was coming back to change everything. At 8:55 a.m., I stood in the control room, watching the monitors flicker as Nexora prepared to go live. The energy was different this time. There was no panicked scrambling, no whispered blame, just focused silence. The kind that comes when people know exactly what's expected and trust the person leading them. Mia glanced over from her station. All systems nominal, 30 seconds. I nodded. Let's go. At precisely 9 a.m., Nexora launched. This time, everything worked. The homepage loaded flawlessly across all regions. User sessions fired up without a hitch. Investor dashboards pinged live within seconds. Within 5 minutes, we hit 20,000 concurrent users. By 10 minutes, it was 50,000. No crashes, no glitches, no excuses. The silence in the control room broke with a soft cheer. But I didn't cheer. I just watched and let it settle in. At 9:15 a.m., Leonard called. Amanda. His voice was calm. Well done. Thank you, I said, keeping it professional. He hesitated. We'll need to discuss your next steps. The board is impressed. I let a small smile touch my lips. I'm sure we will. Because I already knew what I was going to say when that conversation happened. At 9:30 a.m., I walked into the boardroom, this time by invitation. Victoria was already inside, seated at the far end. Her face looked tighter than yesterday, paler, like a CEO clinging to a title that no longer meant anything. Leonard stood as I entered. Amanda, please. I took my seat, this time at the center of the table. Daniel sat beside me. Mia, invited as head of development, sat on my other side. Leonard cleared his throat. As you're all aware, Nexora's launch this morning was a success, thanks to Amanda and her team. He didn't say, despite Victoria. He didn't have to. He turned toward Victoria. We've reviewed the internal reports and Amanda's documentation. The board has decided... He paused. To restructure leadership within product operations. Victoria blinked. Restructure? Leonard's expression remained neutral. You'll step back from operational oversight effective immediately. Your role will transition to strategic partnerships. No direct authority over Amanda or her division. Victoria opened her mouth, but Marianne cut her off. We've also decided Amanda will lead product operations on a permanent basis with board oversight. A hush settled around the room. Victoria turned toward me, eyes flashing. You planned this. I met her gaze calmly. Number you did. She pushed her chair back, standing. This isn't over. I didn't flinch. Maybe, but this part is. Leonard gave her a slow nod. You're dismissed, Victoria. She left without another word. And just like that, the storm passed, but the real decision came after the meeting. At noon, Leonard approached me in the hallway. Amanda, the board wants to discuss a long-term leadership role, vice president level. You've earned it. I looked at him carefully. I'll consider it. He smiled. You've changed how we see things. The way this was handled, it won't happen again. I nodded. I'll hold you to that. Because I wasn't here for a title. I wasn't here to play politics. I was here to make sure no one else on my team or in this company that would ever be thrown aside the way I was. By 4 p.m., I sent out a company-wide message. Leadership isn't about control. It's about accountability. Starting today, every decision in product operations will be transparent and earned. My door is open. Simple, clear, exactly the kind of message I'd always wanted to hear, and never did. At 5 p.m., Mia knocked on my office door. She smiled. I think you just made a lot of people believe in this place again. I gave her a nod. Good, that's the point. Because here's the truth I learned through all of this. Power isn't in titles, or contracts, or boardrooms. It's in knowing who you are, standing your ground, and making sure the people who come after you don't have to fight the same battles you did. Victoria thought firing me would end my career. She was wrong. It ended hers. And it gave me the chance to finally build something that would last. On my terms, with integrity. And no one would ever take that away.